Oh, what if Ned Stark demanded a trial by combat instead of confessing on the steps of the great sept of Baelor and begging for mercy? What if 3 quiet words cut across the heat and the hate of that day and turned the whole realm on its head? In truth, we have to follow that path all the way to the end. No, he does not beg. He does not choke on false treason with a sword at his neck instead. As the crowd roars and Joffrey leans forward on his throne of stone and sunlight, Ned Stark slowly lifts his head. His eyes find Sansa weeping below. They find Arya hidden in the sea of faces, and then the king. Then Cersei waiting for the confession. She bled and schemed for, and when he speaks, his voice is rough but clear. I demand trial by combat for a heartbeat. The room goes silent. No one moves, no one breathes. The gold cloaks still have their blades at his back. The High Septon's mouth hangs open. The small folk packed below the steps stare up in confusion. They know the law. They know that even a condemned man may call on the gods to judge by steel, but they have never seen the hand of the king do it on the very day of his death sentence. If this continues, it will not be a quiet execution. It will be a storm. This is the moment that fractures the story. We know in canon, Ned confesses he names himself traitor to save his daughters. He bends his honor to spare their blood, and Joffrey takes his head anyway. That single strike turns the square red and sends the realm plunging into the War of the Five Kings. But here with one demand, the blade pauses, the judgment shifts from a boy king's whim to the cold, cruel mercy of the gods. So the question for you is simple. If the most honorable man in Westeros hides behind no shield of mercy and instead invokes the harshest law of faith and steel, does it save his life or does it burn the realm? Even faster, we are going to walk through it step by step, from the first shocked arguments over whether a confessed traitor still has that right to the desperate legal wrangling in the sept, as Cersei hisses that this does not need to end in blood, and Pycelle mumbles precedents that no one has heard. In 100 years, we will see who the crown dares to name as their sword against Eddard Stark, Jaime Lannister with his easy smile and hungry eyes, or Sandor Clegane with his burned face and brutal strength. And we will watch to see if any knight in that crowd dares to stand for Ned under the eyes of the Seven as the faith weighs every breath, and the small folk whisper that the gods themselves might expose Joffrey's bloodline. On those steps by fire and steel, and from that first clash of law and fear, we will follow the shockwaves, a different war in the Riverlands, a different king on the Iron Throne, a different end for the game itself. In medias res at the sept, rewriting. Ned's last stand. The roar of the crowd crashes against the sept, like the sea against stone, a single living thing made of dust and sweat and breath, as Eddard Stark kneels on the steps of Baelor. His knees ache against the warm marble. His hands shake just enough that he can feel it in his bones, as Ser Elan's great sword waits above him like a hanging star of dull steel. Sansa's voice cuts through the noise, high and breaking, as she pleads for her father's life, clutching at Cersei's sleeve while the queen's smile sits cold and fixed. Joffrey leans forward on the balcony, small fingers curled on the stone, his eyes bright with cruel delight. "You all know the traitor," he calls, and the crowd answers with a low growl, a rolling hatred that makes Ned's chest tighten. The High Septon stands to one side, heavy and solemn in his crystal crown, while the small council watches, each man measuring every heartbeat. Ned forces himself to raise his head. His voice comes out rough. "I come before you to confess my treason in the sight of gods and men." The words taste like blood. He feels each one strike like a hammer as he forces them on. "I betrayed the faith of my king. I plotted to depose Joffrey Baratheon and steal his throne." The lie hangs there. In truth, it is heavier than any sword. He hears the crowd hiss, feels Sansa sag with relief beside the queen. It sees Cersei's shoulders slowly loosen as the script unfolds as planned. "I am guilty," Ned says, bowing his head. "I ask mercy of the true-born king, Joffrey of houses Baratheon and Lannister." He feels the seven-pointed star carved above the great doors burning between his shoulders, as if the stone itself judges him. He dares a glance sideways. Varys' soft eyes are unreadable. Littlefinger's mouth twitches, almost amused. Pycelle wheezes, nodding along. Beyond them, the gold cloaks line the steps, swords ready, waiting to strike at a single shouted word. He looks down into the crowd. Arya is only a shadow to him now, somewhere in that sea of faces, small and fierce and alone. He cannot see her, but he feels her like a knife point under his ribs. If this continues, she will watch him die. His breath slows. The roar fades to a dull thrum. The room goes silent inside his skull. Joffrey straightens, savoring the moment. "My mother and the council would have me spare the traitor's life," he announces, drawing it out, letting the crowd hang on every word. "But they have the soft hearts of women. So I say, let his..." Ned lifts his head. The decision is a clean, hard thing. "By the laws of gods and men," he calls, voice ringing over the square, "I claim trial by combat." For a heartbeat, nothing moves. Then the sept itself seems to gasp. The small folk suck in air as one. The high septon jolts, one fat hand clutching at his chest, crystal bells chiming as he turns. Cersei's smile freezes, the blood draining from her face even as her eyes dart to the faith, to the King's Guard, to the watching knights below. Steel whispers. The white cloaks shift, as gauntlets tightening on hilts. Every knight on the steps suddenly aware of his own sword and of the ancient weight of the words just spoken. This does not need to end in blood, Ned thinks, staring up at the seven-pointed star, knowing the lie of it as his own heart hammers, knowing that if the gods answer here, everything in Westeros will change. The inciting divergence. Can a confessed traitor still fight? For a heartbeat, nothing moves. Then Ned draws breath, slow and ragged, and forces his voice to carry over the steps and the sea of faces below. "I demand trial by combat." The words strike harder than any sword. The crowd doesn't cheer or scream. It exhales, a low hiss of shock that rolls across the square and up the white steps of the sept. The gold cloaks glance at one another, and even the Lannister men tighten their grips, as if steel itself is waiting for permission to sing. In Westeros, this is not madness. It is law. Trial by combat is a judgment of the gods, an old, stubborn right that clings to the bones of the realm. Tyrion Lannister claimed it in the Eyrie with the moon door yawning at his back, a condemned man using faith and steel to claw his way out of certain death. Lords and killers alike have stood behind that same shield. If the gods favor your sword arm, your sins are washed clean. Ned has confessed. His voice, broken on Joffrey's command, already rang over this very square. But in truth, that confession was dragged from him, with his daughters held in front of him, like blades. No maester has read a formal sentence. No septon has named his punishment. The king has not yet spoken the final words. In that narrow space between accusation and decree, the old right still lives. Pycelle knows it. His eyes flicker, his breath catching as he shuffles forward, torn between law and the queen's will. The high septon knows it too, standing at the top of the steps, robes heavy, watching this Stark kneel beneath the carved faces of the seven. To deny a judgment of the gods here, on the very doorstep of their greatest sept, is to say the crown stands above heaven, and that is dangerous. The trial was meant to be theater, a broken traitor, a merciful boy king, a story to steady a tottering throne. Instead, Ned has turned the stage against them. He is not playing clever games. His mind is too tired for that. He thinks only of Sansa watching from the balcony, of Arya somewhere in this city with a wooden sword and wild eyes, of Robb riding south, banners raised, if this continues and word comes that his father died a coward's death. If the gods want him, they can take him in the open before all of King's Landing. If they spare him, if his champion stands, then the lie on the Iron Throne will be judged as well. This does not need to end in blood, he tells himself, knowing it already has, knowing more will come. The room goes silent in its own way, not stone walls, but a city square held in thrall. Every knight on the steps waits. Will Joffrey, with Cersei's hand clawing his sleeve, honor the law of gods and men before the seven, or spit in their faces and dare the heavens to strike him down? The boy king opens his mouth. Crown versus gods, the argument on the steps of Baelor. No, Joffrey snaps. The word cracks across the square like a sword on steel. Then he jerks against Cersei's grip, eyes bright with that cruel, hungry light. He confessed. He's a traitor. I want his head. Now. His breath comes fast, almost excited. As he stares down at Ned like a boy at a dog he means to stone, Cersei seizes the moment, raising her voice before anyone else can move. "You hear him?" she calls, the queen's poise wrapped tight over raw panic. The king has spoken. This broken man raves of rights he forfeited with his treason. His words mean nothing. She lets her gaze sweep the steps, daring contradiction. "End this farce." Below, Pycelle and Varys trade a single, sharp glance. The old master's beard trembles as he leans in, robes rustling softly. "Your Grace," he murmurs, "such customs need not be observed in every case." Varys does not nod, does not shake his head. He only watches, silent, now weighing the air like a man feeling for a storm. But the storm finds them first. A senior septon, heavy and pale in his crystal crown, slowly steps forward from the ranks of the faith. His voice is low, yet it carries. "Your Grace, before the Seven, trial by combat is a sacred rite." He bows, but not deeply. "Even a condemned man may call upon the gods, much less a great lord of the realm, once hand to your father." For a heartbeat, the room goes silent again in its own strange way, this open stone plaza turning into a chamber of judgment. Hundreds of eyes fix on the septon, on the boy king, on the man in chains. Cersei's smile tightens. "The faith would put a sword in the hand of every traitor then?" she asks, every word a careful strike. "Shall we empty the dungeons onto your holy steps?" "In truth, oh, your grace," the septon replies. "The faith only asks that the gods be allowed to speak. To deny the right is to say the Seven are unnecessary." He lets the word hang, dangerous. Littlefinger chooses that hanging word to slide in, all soft leather and softer tone. "If this continues," he says, "the small folk will whisper that the king fears the gods' judgment. But if his grace grants the trial, and his chosen champion prevails, then every man and woman here will swear the Seven themselves favor Joffrey's reign." Varys folds his hands. "And if the right is refused, my lord, those same whispers may turn to unrest. The faith has long memories. So do crowds who smell blood denied." Joffrey bristles. "I don't fear him," he spits. "I'll show them, Cersei's fingers dig into his arm. Her mind moves faster than his rage. Would a controlled champion, a public victory, a God-sanctioned killing that washes their falsehood clean. This does not need to end in blood, she tells herself, knowing it will anyway, but perhaps in useful blood. She bends close, voice a hiss only he can hear. "Name a champion, my sweet. Let the gods prove you right." He straightens, preening under invisible applause. "Very well," he declares, throwing his arms wide to the crowd. "I am a merciful king. Eddard Stark shall have his trial by combat." The square erupts, cheers crashing like a wave, hungry for the promise of steel and death. The camera holds on Ned Stark's face as the roar swallows the steps. His expression is unreadable. Only the slow rise and fall of his chest betrays that he is still counting every breath, every path this choice might open. And close. It choosing the killers, who fights for crown and wolf. The roar of the crowd rolls over the steps of Baelor's sept, but inside the royal box, the air feels thin, trial by combat. The words taste like iron in every mouth that understands what they truly mean. Steel, not parchment, will decide whether Eddard Stark is traitor or victim. Joffrey shifts on the stone, trying to look like a king and not a boy drowning in noise. Cersei does not look at Ned. Her eyes move instead over the men below, weighing them like blades on a rack. The first and simplest choice stands only a few paces from the throne. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, his burned face half in shadow, his hand resting too easily on his sword. Sandor is the king's sworn dog, bound to obey, feared by half the city's small folk. He has killed before their eyes. He'd ridden down men in the streets, left blood steaming on cobbles. Choose him, and the message is clear. The gods will speak through brute strength and terror. If this continues, no one will mistake who truly rules. But there are other names. Ser Meryn Trant stands among the King's Guard, white cloak stirring slowly in the hot wind. A sworn knight of the royal shield, anointed by the faith, his presence would wrap the duel in a sheen of sanctity. And beyond him, like a shadow over the whole room, hangs Jaime Lannister. Absent, yes, riding with Tywin, but still a Kingsguard in name. Cersei could press to name him in absentia, a declaration that the king's justice reaches farther than distance. Then there is Gregor Clegane, not present, not summoned, but always an option when the crown wants pure slaughter. By royal decree, the mountain could be named champion, his size and savagery turned into a statement. The gods favor the strong, and the strong are Lannister. Cersei leans toward Joffrey, her voice low, her breath tight. She speaks of piety, of letting the gods decide through their most fearsome instrument. In truth, she is stacking the deck as brutally as she can. Gregor if they can reach him, Sandor if they cannot. No mercy, no doubt. Across the square, Ned stands alone. Jory Cassel is dead. His household guard lies scattered or slain in the streets where Littlefinger's betrayal first struck. Syrio Forel is a ghost in his mind, last seen with a wooden sword against steel, doomed. His northern bannermen are weeks away on the King's Road. Sansa and Arya are somewhere in this sea of faces, but they can only watch. What choices does he truly have? He could demand a fight for himself, broken leg and all, leaning on a shield, forcing his body to answer one last time. Or he can invoke his right to name a champion and trust that honor still lives in this city. A gold cloak who remembers the old hand. A hedge knight, desperate to prove his worth. Even Barristan Selmy, standing so close to the boy king, could step forward and shatter every expectation. The herald raises his staff. The room goes silent in stages, like a great beast drawing in breath. By decree of his grace, he cries, the crown names as its champion. Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Sandor steps out, steel rasping free, point lowering toward the stone where Ned will stand. The sept itself seems to hold its breath as every eye turns to the man in chains, waiting to see who will raise a sword for the Wolf of Winterfell. He, the unlikely champion, who realistically stands for Ned? For a heartbeat no one moves. The gods have been named, the king's dog has been called, and still Ned Stark stands alone in chains beneath the staring stone faces of the Seven. In truth, the easy answers are far away. Robb is riding in the north with his banners only just stirring. Jory Castle lies cold in the ground, and Syrio Forel's fate is a shadow in a foreign stairwell. This is not the moment for a hidden cavalry to ride in and save him. No secret sword slipping through the crowd. Whoever stands for Ned Stark must be here now, in this room, under Joffrey's cruel little smile. The High Septon clears his throat, the sound rough and old. The accused is entitled to name a champion, he says, eyes flicking uneasily between the boy king and the chained lord. Oh, so the laws and the gods declare. If this continues with no one stepping forward, the entire theater of piety they have built on these steps will collapse into simple slaughter. Ned slowly lifts his head. There is no need, he rasps. I will fight. The words cost him breath. His leg is weak. His ribs still ache from the dungeon's attentions. But Stark blood remembers the old way. A man answering for his own honor with his own sword. For a moment, he can almost feel the weight of ice in his hands again. Sandor's mouth twists. You can barely stand, old man, he says, but his eyes are measuring, not mocking. Even he knows this would not be a contest, only a butchery. The High Septon shakes his head, sweat beading on his brow. A judgment must be a fair trial of strength, he insists, voice trembling yet firm. Yes, else it is no judgment at all. This does not need to end in blood without honor. The room goes silent at that, the word honor thrown like a stone into a nest of vipers. Across the steps, Ser Barristan Selmy stands in white, as he has stood for 3 kings. His sword is sheathed, his face carved from habit and discipline, but inside, something shifts. He remembers Robert's booming laugh, the weight of the king's hand on his shoulder, the promise that the king's guard would defend the realm, not a boy who orders heads struck off for sport. Could he, bound by oath, turn now and offer his steel to a condemned traitor? Or is he in truth serving the realm better by letting this man die? The questions cut deeper than any strike. His knuckles whiten on the pommel, his breath coming slow and measured as he watches Joffrey lean forward, eager for blood. Before he can move, another voice rings out from the press of onlookers. I'll stand for him. A lane opens in the crowd as a hard-bitten knight steps through, mail-patched, cloak sun-faded, the look of a man who has sold his sword and half the kingdoms. Not quite Bronn, not quite any lord's man, but one of that breed, drawn by the scent of coin, of fame, of a place in every tavern tale from here to the Trident. "Name yourself," the High Septon demands. "Sir Corin Vine," he answers, bowing just enough. His eyes flick to Ned, weighing the risk, the reward, the chance that if he wins, no king in Westeros will dare forget his name. "I'll be his champion by the gods' witness." Murmurs ripple, then die. The room goes silent again as Ser Corin steps out into the open stone, drawing his sword with a harsh scrape. Yet Sandor Clegane mirrors the motion, steel flashing, helm hiding his face, but not the killing intent in his stance. Their eyes meet across the space between them, one knight of no great house and the king's hound, and in that distance hangs more than one man's life. Because if this stranger wins, the king's justice itself may fall, and then, at last, Ser Barristan moves. From spectacle to crisis, Tywin, Robb, and the realm. React Barristan steps forward, cloak whispering against stone, but before steel can cross, the scene fractures. Time skips. The next strike is not a sword, but a whisper. It starts in Flea Bottom, in the stink of tanners' pits and cheap ale, where a toothless man swears he saw a white-haired knight stand before the king and name the gods as Ned Stark's judges. The tale crawls up the hill, and passed from mouth to mouth, until the room goes silent in wine sinks and brothels, as someone repeats the same words again and again. Trial by combat. By dusk, even the rat catchers know. The hand of the king has staked his life on a single fight. Inside the Red Keep, the story moves more slowly but cuts deeper. Pages carry sealed orders, septons murmur about blasphemy and courage, and every lord in silk weighs which way the gods might lean. Servants listen at doors, count which knights are summoned, watch which sword belts are buckled. In truth, half the castle seems to breathe in unison, waiting for the date named by the High Septon, as if the whole fortress is drawing a single, long breath it cannot release. Far to the west, a raven beats its wings over the golden fields and drops Tywin Lannister's doom into his war camp. He breaks the seal with stained fingers, eyes flicking over the lines. Ned Stark, alive. Trial by combat demanded. Barristan named as his champion. For a heartbeat he is still, silent as the grave. Then the cup of wine on his map table goes flying, dark blood-red liquid soaking the painted rivers and roads. He curses Cersei without raising his voice, each word a measured strike, divine judgment, a public test of their right to rule, when Joffrey's blood is the very thing that must never be questioned. If this continues and the king's chosen champion falls, every man who bent the knee to House Lannister will feel the ground tilt under him. Even a narrow victory, a wounded knight limping from the yard, will tell the realm the gods hesitated. North of Moat Cailin, another raven finds Robb Stark. The parchment shakes in his hand as he reads that his father yet lives, that the gods themselves may spare him. The young wolf had been ready to march, sword point south, banners snapping, but now his council tent becomes a different kind of battlefield. Some urge speed, to break the Lannisters before judgment can be twisted. Others whisper that this does not need to end in blood, that if Barristan wins, the king must free Ned or stand condemned before Sept and city. Robb lies awake, staring at the canvas roof, hearing every distant horse's breath, wondering whether to trust steel in King's Landing or steel in his own hand. Across the narrow sea's echoing rumor, two brothers in the Stormlands listen. Renly smiles behind green and gold, seeing spectacle and opportunity. Let the Lannisters swagger into the yard. Let all the realm watch their arrogance tested under the eyes of the Seven. If they stumble, his own path to a crown brightens. Stannis only frowns, jaw tight, mind turning on law like a grindstone. A god-sanctioned defeat of the crown's champion would not just shame a boy king, it would tear at the parchment of every decree Joffrey has ever signed. Ravens fly, camps whisper. In taverns from White Harbor to Old Town, small folk place quiet bets on old Barristan's arm and the hound's savage strength. The date of the combat fixes itself in the minds of lords and peasants alike, an unmoving point on the road ahead. Armies slow or hasten, schemes are rewritten, but no one truly tries to stop it. because now all of Westeros is marching toward that yard, whether they know it or not. Then dawn at the Great Sept, stage set for divine judgment. Dawn comes to King's Landing like a held breath finally released, cold and thin and sharp. Mist clings to the cobbles around the Great Sept of Baelor, slowly burning away as the first pale light spills over the domes and statues, turning marble saints into looming shadows that watch the living gather below. The bells begin to toll, deep and relentless, and with each strike, the square tightens, bodies pressing shoulder to shoulder until the place that nearly saw Ned Stark's head fall becomes an arena. Merchants abandon their stalls, Septons murmur half-remembered prayers. Children are hoisted onto shoulders so their wide eyes can see better. The air is almost silent despite the crowd, broken only by the bells and the distant clatter of hooves as the city watch forces a path. Gold cloaks shove people back, forming a rough ring before the steps, a hard circle of steel and spear points where the gods will be asked to choose a side. Sandor Clegane comes first. The hound's armor is scarred and dark, not polished for ceremony, but for killing. His burned face is bare, helm tucked under one arm, the other hand loose near his sword, as if he expects this to turn ugly before the end. He moves through the parted line of guards without looking at them, eyes fixed on the empty space where he will stand, where he will strike, where blood will spill if this continues. Opposite him, Ned's champion steps into view. The man's plate is plain but well kept, leather straps tight, mail freshly oiled. The Stark direwolf worked in simple silver rather than jewels. He bows his head once toward the sept, once toward Ned, then plants his feet on the stone, testing his grip, feeling the weight of his sword as if measuring his own life against it. Above them, on a hastily raised wooden dais, the crown assembles. Joffrey slouches on a high-backed chair, kicking his heels, restless, his thin smile betraying that to him, this is sport. A new kind of execution to savor. Cersei sits rigid beside him, every ring and clasp precise, her eyes cool as she studies the ring of steel and the restless sea of faces. To her, this is a necessary cruelty, a public lesson that the king's word still rules. The king's guards stand around them in a white wall, swords at hips, visors down, while the high septon, heavy and slow, is led to the steps. He lifts his hands and the room goes silent in all but name. Thousands fall quiet, as if they share a single breath. Ned is brought out last. His wrists are unchained for the judgment, but the marks are there, red on pale skin. He looks thinner, older, yet his back is straight. He has already accepted death. In truth, he met it the day he signed Robert's name on that parchment, but his eyes still search for his daughters. If the gods grant him victory, perhaps Sansa and Arya will see the North again. If not, perhaps mercy can still be bought with his final words. Sansa stands near the front with the queen's retinue, fingers white where they clutch each other, lips moving in desperate prayer to every god she can name. She stares at the ring of stone where swords will cross, trying not to imagine her father's blood there. Somewhere in the crush beyond the gold cloaks, Arya slips between legs and barrels, needle hidden under her rough cloak, eyes sharp, and counting guards, weighing mad plans she knows she cannot use. In the shadow of a statue, Varys and Littlefinger watch. Varys' hands are folded, expression soft, almost sorrowful. "Do you think the gods care for such games?" he whispers. Littlefinger's mouth twists. "If they do, they have a strange sense of humor," he murmurs back. In truth, it is men who will bleed for their verdict. Behind the dais, Pycelle leans close to Cersei, beard trembling as he mutters that there is still time, that a quiet execution in the Red Keep or exile to the Wall would spare the city this spectacle. Varys adds his own silken counsel, suggesting that this does not need to end in blood, that a public show of mercy might bind more hearts than a killing. Cersei listens, eyes on the crowd, on the hungry faces that came to see if kings can be shamed. She thinks of her father, of the letters already sent, of what Tywin Lannister will say if the crown bends now. Slowly, she straightens. "The king has spoken," she says, voice low but final. "The gods will judge." The bells fall still. The champions step forward, and all of Westeros, gathered in that stone yard or far away waiting on rumor, leans toward the moment when the first sword is drawn. Terms of the duel, rules, oaths, and hidden agendas. The bell's echo has barely died when the High Septon steps forward, fat hand raised, voice already rolling out over the stone yard like a slow drumbeat of doom. "By the laws of gods and men," he intones, "this matter shall be decided by single combat." His eyes pass from Ned to Joffrey, then to the gathered lords, weighing each face. One champion for the accused, one for the crown. They shall fight until death or incapacitation, until one can no longer raise sword or stand. The victor's cause shall be held as the will of the Seven. The room goes silent if a courtyard full of steel and breath can be called a room at all. Even the wind seems too still. The Septon's voice hardens. "No man or woman shall give aid, counsel, or interference once the combat begins. Any who do so stand excommunicate before the faith and traitor before the king." Cersei hears the word traitor and thinks of how easily it is spoken. In truth, she means to make sure it never falls on her again. She moves quickly, before anyone else can. "The crown's champion is named," she says, "Sandor Clegane." The hound steps forward, mail and plate clinking, greatsword strapped across his back, heavier and longer than any common knight's blade. The choice is obvious. Raw strength, ruthless brutality, no hesitation. For Ned, there is only one name that makes sense in this place, before these gods. "Ser Barristan Selmy," he says, voice rough but steady. Barristan bows his head once. No flourish, no speech. He simply steps to the center as armorers hurry to check straps and buckles. The faith insists on parity, so it is agreed aloud that both men may bear full plate and shield. Yet no one says Sandor's plate is thicker at the chest, his helm forged heavier, his shield broader. His greatsword is allowed as his customary weapon, while Barristan takes a long sword and a plainer, slightly lighter shield, built for speed rather than the crushing strike. Cersei presses on. "We waste daylight. Let it be now. No rest, no food." The gods have heard enough. If this continues to move quickly, she thinks, there will be no time for second thoughts, no time for northern schemes. The High Septon hesitates, then nods. So be it. The judgment is immediate. As the armorers finish, Ned is allowed a moment. He steps close to Barristan, the clank of the old knight's plate loud in the sudden hush. There are no grand words. Ned's breath mists between them. "If they grant you victory," Ned says quietly, "see my daughters safe, that is all." Barristan meets his eyes, pale and clear. "I will. Nothing more. No promise of survival, no false comfort, just the simple weight of a vow." They turn back as the High Septon raises his hands over the crude fighting circle scratched into the yard's dust. Torches gutter along the walls despite the daylight. Their smoke curling up like offerings. The crowd presses in, then slowly falls silent as if some unseen hand closes around every throat at once. "Do you swear," the Septon calls, "before the Father, the Warrior, and all the Seven, to fight in the name of your cause and accept their judgment in blood?" "I swear," Barristan says. "I swear," Sandor growls. Even Joffrey, staring down from his high seat, feels a flicker of unease. "This does not need to end in blood," some buried child's voice whispers, but the swords are already being drawn, and somewhere above the sept, the first dark cloud slides over the sun. The High Septon drops his hands. "Begin." And in that single word, the fate of kings, kingdoms, and every watching pair of eyes tilts toward the first strike, first clash. Steel, fear, and the hound's relentless advance steel scrapes free like a drawn breath. Sandor's greatsword leaves the scabbard with a harsh rasp that seems to shake the sept itself, while Ned's chosen knight answers with a cleaner ring, bright and sharp, a sound that cuts through the murmuring crowd. Boots grind on stone as they slowly advance, step by step, the roar outside the doors thinning into a tense, distant hum. Inside, the room goes silent, every set of eyes fixed on that narrow stretch of floor between the statues of the Seven. They circle. Sandor's shoulders are hunched, shield lifted high, sword already angled for the kill. His breath is steady, controlled, a low animal growl beneath the chanting of a few desperate faithful. Opposite him, the northern champion moves lighter on his feet, blade held close. They'd weight on the balls of his boots, testing the ground. feeling the drag of his armor, marking the reach of the bigger man's sword in quick, measuring glances. Sandor moves first, no feint, no flourish. He simply steps in and brings the sword down in a brutal overhead strike that crashes against shield and bone. The sound booms through the sept, a crack of thunder against oak. The smaller knight staggers back, knees buckling, shield arm flaring with sudden pain, but he pivots, slides left, refuses to be driven straight back into the marble steps where the king watches with narrowed eyes. Another blow, heavier. Sandor hammers at the shield again and again, not caring for elegance, only for damage. Wood splinters, iron rims bend, each impact shoving his foe a little further, testing for weakness, for any hitch in breath. Did he any falter in guard? He is not here to impress. In truth, he is here to break. The northern sword answers only in flashes, a parry that turns a cut off the shoulder, a quick riposte that scrapes sparks from Sandor's mail. The knight gives ground, but not in a straight line. He angles away, circles, always trying to slip past Sandor's shield side, to make the hound turn, to make the heavy armor and bulk pay a price. He counts his steps, counts his breaths. Winter is coming. Hold, endure. Let the storm tire itself. Gods, someone whispers, guide your champion. Sandor barks a harsh laugh, driving forward, shield slamming, sword hacking. The gods don't swing your bloody sword, he snarls, loud enough for the first rows to hear. Steel does, arm does. His contempt for the faith hangs in the air like smoke, an insult thrown in the High Septon's silent face. The knight hears it, feels the words like stones, but he drags his mind back to the mantra that steadied him in the yard. Left, right, step, breathe, protect the weak, stand your ground. This does not need to end in blood, his old master used to say. But here, with every strike, blood feels inevitable. Twice he almost finds it. Once when Sandor overreaches, sword biting deep into the floor, the northern blade snapping in toward the gap under his arm, only to catch on the rim of the shield. Once when a quick sidestep brings the hound into the light of a tall window, visor flaring, eyes narrowed against the glare, and a thrust skids off his gorget with a shower of sparks. If this continues, the bigger man should slow. That is the plan. Make him turn, make him chase, and make that relentless advance cost him. But plans crack like shields. Sandor feints high at the head, then at the last instant twists his hips and brings the sword low in a savage rising arc. The northern knight reads it a heartbeat too late. He jerks his leg back, but the edge still catches the greave. Dense metal bites into flesh. The sound is sickening, a dull crunch followed by the wet hiss of torn skin. Blood spatters the stone. The knight staggers, nearly falls. The entire room goes silent again, then exhales in a single, ragged gasp. Even the chanting falters. Up on the steps, Ned's jaw clenches until it aches. His fingers curl white around the rail as he watches his hope bleed, and he knows with a cold, northern certainty that the next exchange may decide not only one man's life, but the fate of every king yet to come, on turning the tide. Technique versus raw power. Sandor presses, smelling victory, but the old knight does not break. He adjusts. Barristan's shield arm trembles as he raises it again, yet his eyes stay clear, tracking every twitch of the hound's shoulders, every hitch in his breath. He has felt power like this before, in the stepstones and on the trident, and he knows in truth that he cannot meet it head-on for long. So, he stops trying. He lets Sandor's sword crash into steel, and air instead of his guard begins to angle away, to circle, to probe at the gaps where plate meets mail and mail meets leather. The next charge comes like a bull. Sandor roars, boots scattering loose stones, sword hacking down toward Barristan's helm. The old knight does not block. He slips right, almost a stumble, lets the blade bite nothing but flagstone. In the same heartbeat, he drives his shield rim hard into Sandor's exposed ribs. Metal thuds, breath explodes from the hound, and Barristan's sword darts in low, kissing across the back of a knee where armor parts. Blood spatters the already stained floor. The room goes silent for a heartbeat, then erupts in a different sound entirely. A rippling gasp that feels like hope. Sandor staggers, one leg suddenly slower, his advance no longer a relentless tide, but a heavy, dragging push. Barristan feels it. He tastes the shift and presses, not with wild strikes, but with small, cruel ones. Point scraping at elbow joints, at the thin mail under the armpit, at the leather straps that hold greaves tight. Under their feet, the ground is turning treacherous. Blood slicks the stones, dark and wet, now mixing with dust and the crushed petals from the crowd's flowers. Each step is a risk. Once, Barristan's heel skids. He catches himself on Sandor's pauldron, twists that stumble into a shove that sends the bigger man half a step off balance. Sandor answers with a savage backhand that smashes into Barristan's shield and knocks him sideways into a standing brazier. Iron screeches, the brazier topples, coals spill, sparks leap, and for a moment, a tongue of fire flares high between them. Sandor freezes. It is only an instant, but his eyes go wide and distant as if he is a boy again, burning, and his sword arm hangs just a fraction too still. Barristan moves. He does not waste the god's gift. He slashes through the curtain of smoke, steel ringing against Sandor's vambrace, then rakes the edge across the hound's gauntlet, at forcing his grip to shift, forcing him back from the flame. Up on the dais, the pattern shatters. Cersei's mask slips. Her lips peel back from her teeth as she leans forward, knuckles white on the arm of the throne, eyes darting between the stumbling hound and the silent High Septon. Joffrey surges to his feet, voice cracking as he screams for Sandor to finish him, to kill the old man, to spill Stark blood here and now. Beside them, the High Septon's lips move in hurried prayer, as if the gods are, at last, truly watching. Below, the fire dies down, but something has changed. Sandor's shoulders heave. Each breath is louder, harsher, his swings wider and less precise. Sweat and blood streak his face. Barristan is battered, shield splintered, mail torn, yet there is a new steadiness in his feet, a rhythm to his steps as he turns the hound. Mas keeps the sun at Sandor's eyes, keeps the coals at his back. If this continues, the outcome no longer feels inevitable. Ned can see it, the crowd can feel it. For the first time since he was dragged to this place, the thought cuts through Ned Stark's fear like a sword through fog. This does not need to end in blood that is his. And on the edge of the room, men who had already decided a king are suddenly not so certain which way the gods will strike. On the edge, near defeat, desperation, and one final gambit. The next exchange is uglier. Sandor drives forward with a hoarse snarl, sword hacking down again and again. Not the clean arcs of a tourney knight, but the brutal, efficient work of a butcher in mail. The royal champion meets him step for step, shield raised, feet sliding slowly through the slick of blood between them. At each strike rings out, steel on wood, steel on steel, until the shield splits down the center with a crack that makes the front rows flinch. Splinters spray across the stones. The champion staggers, arm dragged low by the ruined shield rim, and Sandor does not pause, he presses in, sword battering aside the last of their guard, shoulders smashing into breastplate to drive them back. His breath saws in and out, ragged, loud enough that the small folk in the first ranks can hear it over their own shouts, over the distant toll of sept bells. In truth, the hound is near his limit. Sweat runs in muddy tracks through the ash and dust on his face, his burned flesh and angry mask. His armor hangs loose where straps have been cut, one pauldron half torn away, so that each swing sends a fresh jolt of pain down his side. Across from him, the champion's knees shake, sword point dipping, chest heaving so hard their whole frame seems to shudder with every breath. Then the pattern breaks. Sandor overreaches, sword dragged wide as he tries to end it with one savage cut, and the champion steps in, closer than is safe, closer than any sane fighter wants to be. The sword is trapped between them for a heartbeat. A mailed fist comes up. The pommel slams into Sandor's jaw with a wet crack. His head snaps sideways. For a moment, the room goes silent in his ears, sound drowned in a white rush, knees buckling as lights dance at the edge of his eyes. He drops to one knee, hand splayed in blood, sword tip, scraping stone. The champion sees it. They lunge, slipping on that same blood, heel skidding out. Their body pitches forward as Sandor's sword comes up on instinct, a blind, a vicious swipe. The edge whistles past their exposed throat by inches, close enough to shear a few links from the gorget. Gasps shudder through the crowd as both fighters sprawl apart instead of finishing the kill. If this continues, there may be nothing left of either of them. Sandor forces himself up, legs trembling. The champion pushes to their feet as well, favoring one side where a deep cut has soaked their surcoat through. They circle more slowly now, blades low, shoulders heaving. Every movement is a negotiation with pain. Around them, the city finds its voice. Some of the small folk chant for the king, for Lannister gold and easy certainties. Others scream Ned's name, or just bay for blood. Any blood, so long as it spills bright and close. Above that chaos, Varys leans toward Littlefinger, and his voice almost gentle as he notes that, however this ends, the crown has shown the whole city how fragile it truly is. The champion faints. Sandor bites. Steel crashes together, and they slam chest to chest, swords trapped between them, foreheads nearly touching. Armor grinds, fingers clutch at gorgets and torn straps. Neither can step back without opening their whole body to a killing strike. For a long, thin moment, they simply cling there, shaking, each feeling the other's failing strength, each knowing the next breath, the next desperate twist, will decide everything. The camera drifts from that locked clinch to Ned Stark, chains biting into his wrists, eyes fixed on the fighters as if willing them to stand. Sansa's lips move in silent prayer, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. "Yeah, this does not need to end in blood," she whispers, though she does not know who she begs the gods to spare. The fighters wrench apart with twin roars. Both raise their swords one last time, and the scene cuts before the blades fall. The gods choose a single stroke that changes the realm. Steel meets steel in a blur, and for a heartbeat, no one knows whose sword has found its mark. Time seems to tear itself apart. The first thing that returns is sound. Not the roar of the crowd, but the scrape of boots on stone as the hound drives forward, hacking in brutal chopping blows that shake Barristan's arm to the shoulder. Sandor's breath comes harsh and ragged, eyes wild, the calm of a trained killer fraying into something close to panic. If this continues, his strength will decide it, not skill. Barristan feels it. The old knight gives ground, slowly, step by step, sword turning aside each strike by inches instead of feet, letting the younger man burn himself out. His shoulder screams, his ribs ache where the last glancing cut, split mail and skin, warm blood sliding under his cuirass. But his gaze never leaves Sandor's sword hand. Not his teeth, not his rage, his hand. Sandor faints high, then high again, then simply stops fainting. He roars and commits everything into one murderous overhead chop, aimed to split helm and skull, both hands white-knuckled on the hilt as the blade whistles down. It is the kind of strike that ends men. It is also the kind of strike that cannot be taken back. Barristan steps into it. For an instant, the room goes silent in his mind. He does not see the king, or the High Septon, or Ned Stark kneeling in chains. He sees a dozen battlefields, 100 dead men who overreach just like this, and his body moves the way it has always moved. Sword up, not to meet the blow, but to guide it, twist it, let that savage strength slide harmlessly past. Steel screeches along steel. The hound's sword skids down Barristan's blade, glances off his pauldron, and slams into the stone with a ringing crack that sends sparks up like fireflies. For half a heartbeat, Sandor is bent, off balance, his knee exposed where the plates don't quite meet. Barristan's blade drops like a judge's hand. The edge hooks behind the hound's leading knee and wrenches. Ligaments tear with a wet, sick sound. Sandor's leg buckles and he crashes down, one gauntleted hand slapping the ground, the other still locked on his sword that is suddenly too heavy, too slow. A pain rips a howl from his throat. Barristan does not hesitate. In truth, there is no time. He pivots, brings the point around, and drives his sword hard into the gap between gorget and breastplate, right above the hound's collarbone. The steel punches through mail, flesh, and lung in one savage thrust. Blood sprays across the stones in a bright arc. Sandor jerks once, twice, fingers clawing weakly at the blade buried in his chest, then goes still. The hound collapses in a heap of steel and red, breath bubbling, then fading to nothing. The room goes silent for real. The roar of the crowd dies mid-shout, mouths hanging open. Somewhere high above, a single crow caws, the sound thin and distant in the sudden stillness. Even Joffrey freezes on the steps of the throne, lips parted, eyes wide. As the reality settles on him, the gods have spoken, and they have not chosen his dog. Barristan sways, one hand braced on the hilt, still jutting from Sandor's chest, the other hanging limp at his side. Slowly, with the stiff care of an old man who has spent every last drop of strength, he pulls his sword free and steps back. He stands over the fallen hound, helm tilted down, silver hair darkened with sweat and blood, sword lowered but not sheathed. The High Septon finds his voice first. It cracks, then rises, echoing from the sept walls as he declares the judgment of the gods, the innocence of Eddard Stark, the victory of Ser Barristan Selmy. Each word lands like a hammer blow on the fragile order of the city. Ned lifts his head, stunned, the chain cold on his wrists as he drags in a shaking breath. This does not need to end in blood. And he had thought, but the stones at his knees are slick with it now. Cersei does not scream, she does not faint. Her eyes narrow, sharp and bright, racing over the hall, measuring faces, counting swords, seeing not a miracle, but a map. In truth, she is already rearranging the realm in her mind as the camera lingers on her calculating gaze, setting up the next move in a game that has just changed forever. If Ned lives, Cersei's rage, Joffrey's humiliation, and a city in shock. The High Septon rises with effort, hands shaking over the blood-slick stones, and for a heartbeat, the room goes silent as every eye turns from the fallen knight to the old priest. His voice is thin at first, then steadier, riding the hot air above the crowd. By the will of the Seven, he declares, by trial of steel and sacred custom, and Eddard Stark is innocent of these charges in the eyes of the gods. The words strike harder than any sword. They roll across the square, bounce off marble and gold, spill down into the press of small folk below. Ned can feel each breath around him catch, 1,000 chests locking at once. In truth, the whole city has just been told their hand was never the traitor Joffrey named him. Joffrey moves first. His face twists, blotched and furious, eyes bright with childish rage as he jerks against his mother's grip. "No!" he screams, voice cracking. "I am the king! The gods are wrong! I'll have his head anyway!" The crowd shudders. It is not quite a roar yet, not quite a riot, but it is close. A hiss of disbelief, a low groan of fear, the first shouted prayers rising from the steps of the sept. If this continues, the faith and the throne will tear at each other in front of tens of thousands. Cersei's fingers clamp down on Joffrey's arm. She pulls him back so sharply he almost falls, her smile thin, her eyes wild. "Your Grace misspoke," she says, loud enough to carry. "The gods have given their judgment. We will honor it. This does not need to end in blood." Slowly the noise ebbs, not gone, never gone, but dulled to a nervous rumble. The small folk stare at Ned, battered, bleeding, still on his knees, and then at the boy who would defy the heavens. They whisper that the hand stood calm while knights fought and kings raged, that the gods chose the wolf over the lion. Some murmur that a true king would have trusted such a man. Some, bolder, wonder aloud if the boy on the throne has any right to it at all. Cersei hears every word. She feels the tilt of the city under her feet, the way one more wrong move might send it crashing down upon them. Outwardly she bows her head, nods to the High Septon, orders Ned's chains struck off and proclaims that, by royal mercy, he will be kept under guard until the matter of his exile can be arranged. Inside, she is already choosing knives. House arrest means walls, and walls mean doors, and doors mean keys held by men who can be bought. She thinks of quiet cups of wine, of hunting accidents on the road north, of sellswords whose oaths are not heard by gods. The faith may have spoken, but she will find a way to answer back in the only language she trusts: blood. Ned staggers as they haul him upright. His leg screams, his breath comes ragged. Sansa is suddenly there, flinging herself into his arms. He's sobbing against his chest as gold cloaks form a tight ring around them. Somewhere at the edge of the crowd, a small shape moves with the wary grace of a street cat. Arya, slipping from shadow to shadow, sword at her hip, eyes never leaving her father. Behind them, men lift the crown's fallen champion, armor dented, cloak dark and wet. The body is carried past banners and broken rushes, a ruined offering to the very gods that denied him. The sight follows Ned as he limps away under heavy guard, a grim, swaying symbol of Lannister pride struck down before the whole city. The small folk watch the wolf depart and the corpse pass, and somewhere in that charged, silent moment, King's Landing quietly decides which of them truly lost. And above it all, Cersei Lannister is already planning the next strike, one that will not be seen in any sept. As the camera pulls back and leaves the question hanging. How long can a man the gods have saved live in a city that his queen has doomed? War delayed or transformed. The new shape of the Five Kings conflict. The corpse is carried one way, the wolf rides another, and for a moment it seems the storm might break that very day. It doesn't. It settles, slowly, into something colder. Robb Stark hears the news in a smoky camp, not on a battlefield. His father lives. His father is God-cleared. The Raven's words hit like a sword to the gut and a hand on the shoulder at once, because in truth, it changes everything and nothing. Catelyn watches his eyes, sees the young wolf she almost unleashed, and presses the map flat. If Ned is a living, honored captive rather than a murdered traitor, this does not need to end in blood, not yet. And so, Robb's march shifts. Fewer outriders, more envoys. He still calls the banners. He still cannot leave Sansa, Arya, and the northern hostages in Lannister hands. But his first strike is parchment, not steel. He sends terms south, safe return of his father and sisters, withdrawal from the Riverlands, hostages exchanged. He rides to the Twins not as a rebel king, but as a lord demanding the release of a wronged hand. The room goes silent when he tells his captains that if this continues to be a matter of oaths and hostages, he will treat it as such. Some are relieved, some are hungry for war and feel cheated. Far to the west, Tywin Lannister reads the same reports with a very different breath. A Stark rebellion is one thing. A Stark rebellion led by a dead traitor is simple. But a living Eddard Stark, vindicated before the Seven, who knows the truth of Joffrey's birth and has already broken one Lannister champion in the eyes of the city, is a blade pointed at the heart of Lannister power. Quiet assassination becomes tempting, almost reflexive. Yet if the hand who won his trial by combat dies in a cell, every sept in the realm will whisper that the gods were mocked. Tywin understands that kind of stain never washes out. Renly watches from Highgarden's perfumed halls, hearing how the small folk cheer the Stark who stood alone with a sword and shamed the lion cub. A public sign that the gods do not favor Joffrey stiffens his spine. Why wait for the realm to accept a bastard king when he can move now, cloak himself in the same language of divine displeasure, and claim he is rescuing the realm from a cursed line? Stannis, on his bare rock, seethes but also smiles thinly. Ned's survival gives him a living witness when he finally throws the incest into the light. Every rumor of the trial becomes another piece of moral ammunition for the rightful heir. And over all of this, the faith breathes deeper. The High Septon presided over a judgment that shamed the crown and the Lannisters, yet was obeyed. That precedent will linger. When the faith militant is restored, they will point back to this day and say the Seven themselves once checked a king in that very square. From now on, every monarch who enters the Great Sept will feel those silent stone eyes. Open war does not vanish, it mutates. Instead of fields soaked in blood at once, a cold war grips King's Landing. Ned Stark is kept as a dangerous, honored prisoner, paraded at feasts, confined between guards and courtiers. Think his every word weighed. Ravens fly like arrows, gold moves, knives are sharpened. No banners clash yet, but everyone is already choosing sides, and the first real strike will not come from an army. It will come from a letter, a ship in the night, or a single night in a dark corridor, and the next section follows the first of those moves as it finally shatters this fragile, suffocating peace. Starks, Lannisters, and dragons. Long-term ripples of a living Ned. The first of those moves is not a blade in the dark, but a raven winging north, carrying a father's handwriting and a king's new seal. In Winterfell's Godswood, Sansa's fate bends. She is still a hostage, still watched by southern knights with hard eyes and easy swords. but she is no longer a future queen dangling from Joffrey's cruel hand. Stannis' letters, Ned's quiet pressure, and the faith's memory of that trial force a compromise. The betrothal is set aside for the peace of the realm, yet Sansa remains a Stark in gilded chains, a living pledge that the North will not rise while her father serves his hand. Her days change slowly. No wedding feasts, no torn dress on her wedding night, no years of being Joffrey's plaything. Instead, she is paraded at court, a reminder of northern loyalty, her every breath measured. Cersei cannot strike her openly without insulting the gods who cleared Ned. Joffrey snarls, threatens, imagines new torments, but each time he looks up at the Iron Throne and sees Stannis there, sees Barristan near, and the room goes silent around his rage. Arya's path warps even more. There is no butcher's boy dead by the river, no last sight of her father on a scaffold. With Varys' webs in disarray and Littlefinger in chains, the lanes of King's Landing are less deadly, but more watched. Ned uses what allies he has left to spirit her away, not across the narrow sea, but north, hidden among departing northern men-at-arms, or folded into a household train bound for White Harbor. If this continues, she grows as a Stark scout and knife in the dark, not a faceless ghost. Syrio's lessons echo, but they are sharpened by her father's letters. See, remember, send word. Far to the north, Jon Snow feels the pull of those same ravens. Ned's warnings about the cold things in the woods no longer die in southern council chambers. When Jeor Mormont sends word of dead men walking, Ned does not dismiss it as wilding tales. He presses again and again until Stannis grudgingly allows more steel, more grain, and more eyes on the wall. In truth, the Night's Watch is still starving, still thin, but it is not forgotten. A few more knights ride to Castle Black. A few more maesters whisper about Dragonglass. Ned's knowledge of Joffrey's bastardy sits like a drawn sword that never quite falls. Publicly, the king is Stannis, the law is satisfied, and the boy's claim is ash. Privately, the question lingers. Does Ned push harder, years later, to raise Stannis' daughter Shireen as clear heir? Or does he try to weave some compromise, some marriage pact, that binds Baratheon, Stark, and even a Lannister branch together so that this does not need to end in blood like Aerys and Robert before? Because across the sea, dragons grow. Barristan's voyage to Qarth, the quiet parley in shadowed rooms, the bargain that Daenerys will trade her crown for land and protection, all of it collides with a Westeros that is very different when she finally sails. The Starks are bruised but unbroken. The faith is emboldened by a judgment of the gods that toppled a false king. The Lannisters are weakened, their gold questioned, their names stained by Jaime's death and Tywin's retreat. When Daenerys' ships darken Blackwater Bay, she does not face a boy king and a court of liars. She faces Stannis Baratheon, grim on the throne, and Eddard Stark at his side, older, more tired, but still holding to the same hard line. Does her offer of dragons against the dead find a realm ready to unite, or a realm where every lord now believes the gods will bless his claim if he only dares to reach? The room goes silent again in our minds as we push forward, because the next clash is not just kings and queens, but faith, fire, and ice. And the next section follows Daenerys' first step onto Westerosi soil, and the way one northern lord's honor might either save her or doom them all. What this one choice reveals about Westeros itself. Daenerys' ships cut toward Westeros, but before her keel ever touches Blackwater mud, Ned Stark's choice in the throne room has already rewritten the rules of the game. Because when a man demands trial by combat, he is not just reaching for a sword, he is reaching past the laws of men, past the paper and seals of kings, and throwing himself on what everyone is forced to call the will of the gods. The room goes silent, and suddenly steel becomes scripture. Yet in truth, nothing about it is holy. It is still about who will kill for you, and who can win in that short, brutal instant when one clean strike decides everything. Bronn says it outright in Another Time and Another Cell, mocking the idea that the gods guide a blade. He fights for Tyrion because gold is heavier than piety, because the law is only as strong as the man you can put between yourself and another man's sword. That same cruel logic lives here. Ned survives because a knight like Barristan is willing to stand in his place, because age and skill and angle and footing favor him for one heartbeat. The sept, the faith, the king's banners around them only pretend to explain what blood on the floor has already settled. Ned's path in this timeline only looks different from the scaffold at Baelor's sept. In canon, he reaches for royal mercy, confessing to protect Sansa, Arya, and the realm, equal trusting that Joffrey will honor the script Cersei and Varys have written. Here he reaches for divine law instead, trusting that the Seven will not let an innocent man fall. Both choices come from the same place. A man who believes, almost stubbornly, that there are systems larger than himself that will catch him if he steps off the edge. And yet, this does not need to end in blood is a lie the story refuses to keep. The most honorable path he can see, submit, accept judgment, let the gods decide, still hurls Westeros into chaos. It just redirects the storm. Instead of a butchered hand and a usurper king clinging to fear, we have a vindicated regent, a shattered Lannister prestige, and a realm where every lord watches and thinks. If this continues, if the gods smiled on Ned, might they smile on me? Every famous trial by combat in Westeros is like this. Tyrion's first in the Vale shakes Lysa's fragile court. Oberyn's duel against the Mountain rips the illusion from King's Landing, showing that one man's vengeance can almost topple a dynasty. The outcome never stays in the circle of sand or the tiled floor. It echoes outward, forcing everyone to nod and say the gods have spoken, while privately recalculating their next move. So, when Ned stands cleared and Stannis later wears the crown uncontested, we have to ask, is this truly a better realm or only a slower descent? A living Ned can shield the North, argue for Daenerys, and temper Stannis' fire, but the same hard truths remain. Dragons, White Walkers, hungry lords, and a faith that has now tasted how much power a single public judgment can wield. There the next section steps into that tension, following Daenerys as she walks into a world where Ned Stark's survival may have saved the realm's breath for a moment, or only made the final reckoning colder when it comes. Your verdict. Should Ned have demanded trial by combat? Daenerys steps into that colder world, but behind her, the echoes of one moment in King's Landing still decide who lives and who dies. It all began when Ned Stark, kneeling on the steps of the Great Sept, drew a slow breath and chose 3 different words. Not confession, not surrender. Trial by combat. From there, the line of fate bends hard. The High Septon speaks, the room goes silent, and the law of gods and men is dragged into the light. Barristan Selmy steps forward as Ned's champion. O alone knight of the Kingsguard, placing his sword in honor against Jaime Lannister's. Steel rings, blood sprays the stones, and when Barristan's final strike sends the Kingslayer to the ground, Pycelle's quavering voice must name Ned innocent, while half the court forgets how to breathe. In truth, that is the wound the crown never recovers from. Ned moves quickly, seizing Cersei, Joffrey, Littlefinger, Pycelle, turning the same public stage into a quiet coup. Tywin's power bleeds away as Western lords hesitate. Robb never has to fight his way south as a rebel, and instead, the North, Riverlands, and a humbled West march beneath Stannis' new banner. Renly rises and falls at Summerhall. The Tyrell pride is broken, and by the time Daenerys' ships touch Westerosi shores, Ned Stark stands alive at the center of a kingdom held together by law, fear, and the memory of one sanctioned duel. So, what is this truly? Did Ned, by choosing the sword over a lie, finally make the right choice? Or did he simply trade one Stark tragedy for another, shifting where the bodies fall without changing the game beneath them? If this continues, if every great question is answered by a single deadly contest before the eyes of the faith, how long before some other king or lord gambles the realm on one more sacred fight? Now it is your turn to pass judgment. Who should have stood for Ned in that moment, in your eyes? Barristan, as we followed here? Robb, dragging the North's fury into the Sept itself? Syrio, if he had somehow survived the Lannister blades, should the crown have honored the trial at all? Or should Cersei and Joffrey have risked open war by denying the gods in front of the small folk? And when Daenerys arrives with dragons and hard lessons of her own, does this altered Westeros welcome her as an ally? Or try to burn her before she can ever draw breath on the Red Keep steps? Tell me which path you believe. Do you want to see a world where Jaime is named Ned's champion instead, forced to choose between lion and wolf? Or a darker thread where Tywin refuses the trial, defies the faith, and turns the sept into a slaughterhouse despite every plea that this does not need to end in blood? Comment which what if you want next, and we will follow that sword's edge. If you stayed with Ned through this long night, like the video, subscribe for more broken timelines, and leave your verdict below. Were those 3 unsaid words, trial by combat, the choice that would have saved the man who believed in honor more than power? Or would the gods of Westeros have watched in silent judgment and let him fall anyway? Your answer decides where we strike next.